After further review with Sean Salisbury, quarterback guru, can Saints salvage Derek Carr and Jameis Winston?
Sean, they go up to Minnesota and Derek Carr threw for 64 yards in the first half. It's
horrible.
Stunning with all of the weapons you have.
Bad.
And I think you'd objectively agree when you look at Chris Olave and Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara and Rashid Shaheed. Like, you got weapons on that. You got weapons.
How many times have I said it? I would put the Saints' weapons, I would put the package, I'd put their roster, I'd put their playmakers, however you want to phrase it, up against just about any team in the NFL. I mean, any team in the NFL, barring a couple, barring like the top end teams, I think the Saints are right up there. You even look at someone like a team like Detroit, right? A team that's really good offensively. If you told me I could have Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, and then whoever else they have at wide receiver, Sam Laporta and whoever else, or I could have Derek Carr, Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, Rashid Shaheed, Taysom Hill. Even if Detroit is better, they're not that much better, right? They're not far and away better. The Saints are in the conversation for one of the most talented rosters, playmaker-wise, in the NFL.
To throw for 64 yards and a half is just, it's almost unfathomable. Like, is this Derek Carr's talent? Is this a lack of consultation here with Pete Carmichael? I mean, why can't they figure this out?
Well, Matt, I've known that great quarterbacks, and I don't mean this as disrespect to anybody, and I shouldn't even have to qualify that. You know the respect I have not only for Carr and Pete, but for the position and how tough it is to play. But let's just call it like we see it, which I try to do as well. One is that great quarterbacks can overcome, if it was play calling you didn't like, great quarterbacks overcome that, man. I'm just telling you, they do.
Agreed. But I think that's kind of like overshooting the mark. I don't think anybody is contending that Derek Carr is a great quarterback, that Derek Carr is a top tier quarterback, that he's a top 5, top 6 quarterback. I don't think anyone is making that mistake. I certainly wouldn't hope so. The question is, why, if we have Derek Carr and we have all these playmakers, why are we unable to do anything for any sustained period of time on offense? That's the question. Why does the offense look like a bottom 5, bottom 10 offense for most of the year? And I know you're going to say, James, well, we're 11th in yards. I don't care. I don't care about that. I think that's a bad way of doing it. I don't think it should just be total yards equals good offense, because there's a lot of empty yards. There's a lot of, you can mess with those numbers a lot. All right. So if you have watched the Saints this season through 10 games and you think they're a top 15 offense, I would have to politely disagree.
It's just like, how many times a coordinator will say, man, he bailed me out on that call. Yeah. Boy, they dialed up the right defense.
Yeah, Breeze
great quarterbacks find a way to bail that quarterback out, the coach out. They just do. Now, and the other thing is true. A play that's there, good quarterbacks make them some of the time, but the majority of the time, and miss them. And then the average ones who are inconsistent miss them and make them, and it's just a Dow Jones. In this case, you're right. Inexcusable, number one. Now, let me the other team's getting paid too. And I will say this, for a team that was so piss poor on defense last year, Brian Flores has done a great job of forcing more.
Yes, Brian Flores is one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL, for sure. I mean, look, 100%. You got to give credit to the other team, but this is not a singular problem. This is not a 1 week problem, 1 half problem, 1 possession problem. This has been a problem for the entire season. This has been a problem going back. It's Carr is new to this problem, but we had the same problem last year. We've had the problem since Breeze left. We had the problem since Peyton left. This has been a thing where we just don't really know what we're doing offensively. We don't really have an identity. We don't really have a scheme. And we just can't seem to get the good players who we have going. I don't think Derek Carr is a bad quarterback. Derek Carr has been in the NFL for whatever it is, 10 years. He's not a bad quarterback. I don't think he's great. I don't think Derek Carr is, a top 5 guy, top 8 guy, but I think he's certainly serviceable. I think he certainly has the capabilities to be a serviceable, good quarterback. He's somewhere in that conversation, I would think, of the Geno Smiths and Kirk Cousins, even kind of somewhere in that world. He's there. There's no reason he should be as bad as he's been. There's no reason the offense should be as discombobulated, word of the day, as it's been. We can't sustain much of anything. The only thing we have sustained this season is at times we have sustained that the Taysom Hill stuff works. But that is the easiest, right? That's just give Taysom the ball and let him run for 6 yards. There's no creativity. There's no rhyme or reason. It's just, that's the only thing that's worked consistently. We have not consistently got the ball to Chris Olave. We have not consistently got the ball to Michael Thomas. We have not consistently utilized Rashid Shaheed as a deep threat. We have certainly not consistently ran the ball with anyone besides Taysom Hill. We haven't done anything consistently on offense 10 weeks into the season besides give Taysom the ball by himself in the backfield and let him run for 5 yards. That, to me, is the biggest problem. That, to me, is what we need to be talking about. We don't need to be talking about Derek Carr's, his skill level. We don't need to talk about his technique. We don't need to be talking about our left guard, right tackle play. We don't, all that stuff. We need to be talking about why we can't do the simple things. Why we can't have any sustained, not even success. Why we can't have a sustained idea for more than one game, for more than 2 games. Why can't we do that? Why are we so up and down? Why are we such a yo-yo offense?
Long yardage on scoring defense against the run. They're putting offenses in a little bit more of a bind because last year you were playing really, it was like 11 on 7. Their defense was like playing against air. It was,
yeah, they were terrible.
Because I go on in Minnesota every week. It was hard to talk about. And you're like, how can they be this bad defensively? Brian Flores done a great job of bettering that. But
for sure.
And I think the players have buy-in. But for me, it's you can't be. But isn't this what I've said Derek Carr is? Next week, when he's out of concussion protocol, he's going to throw for 360 in a game, go 24 of 28 or 30 of 37 for 3 touchdowns and no picks. He's got spectacular in him. He only rents it. He doesn't live there. And that's just, Matty, I told you at the beginning of this season, and I think in the first month, that you're not winning a Super Bowl at quarterback with him. You're just not. And that's he's a far better player than I was. But I'm just telling you, because you can't have these bouts where when you're driving through a neighborhood and about every 50 yards, there's one of those speed bumps that drive you crazy, but they want people to slow.
I mean, if that's the case, that was a good way of putting it. I haven't heard that before, but that was solid from Sean. That, Carr, he can be really good. And we have seen him at times in his career be really good. And we've seen the numbers, we've seen the fourth quarter comebacks or the drives or whatever. And maybe that's just who he is as a player. But it is very frustrating, I would say, to watch. It's very frustrating to watch this offense. It's very frustrating to watch the whole scheme. And there's so many excuses, or there's so many reasons. I've heard everything. I've heard the offensive line is bad, that's why Carr's bad. I've heard we're injured. I've heard we got people suspended. I've heard growing pains. They're getting used to each other. I've heard first year in the system. Carr, is bad, but he'll figure things out. Every week, it's everything. It's so many different things, and it's gotten to the point now to where I don't even know what we're supposed to be looking for. I don't know what we're trying to do on a week-to-week basis. It's a coin toss. We've gotten back to that where it's every week the scheme is just a coin toss. But I could understand. I'd be okay. I'll say that. I would be okay if Carr is just erratic. If he's just good 1 week, bad the next week, good for 2 weeks, bad another week, good this. If he's doing the same thing, if the offense was trying to do the same thing, I'd be okay with that. What drives me crazy is when you can't even be sporadic. You can't even be up and down because there's no rhyme or reason. It's just like we talk about it all the time, but the different personnel. It's hard for me to sit here and be like, man, we couldn't get We really couldn't do much offensively. Like, it was just kind of whatever, kind of up and down. And then you look at the box score and it's like, oh wait, Chris Olave didn't have a target. What's going on here? Like, oh my God, Taysom Hill had 1 carry. Rashid Shaheed has no targets. What's going on? Like, we're not even giving ourselves the chance. We're not even giving ourselves to be up and down. We're not even. We can't even. It's crazy. We can't even be inconsistent because we don't know what we're trying to do consistently. That's a crazy place to be in as a professional football team, as a team with this many veterans. And that's where I'm at with the offense. Is that, and I kind of talked about it in a couple videos this week where I said we're consistently inconsistent. I have no clue what our offense is trying to do on a week-to-week basis. And let me know in the comments below, do you? What would you say we're even trying to do? Because you can't say we're trying to run the offense through Chris Olave. You can't say we're trying to push the ball downfield with our speed like Rashid Shaheed. We're trying to do that on a week-in basis. We're trying to we're a run-first offense. We're a run-first offense that plays off play action. We are a Taysom Hill-based offense who then does blank. You can't say any of that. We don't have anything that we're trying to do consistently. So if that's the case, you can't even be inconsistent because there's nothing to base that off of. And that's where we're at, and that is a very frustrating place to be as a Saints fan.
Slow down. That's Derek Carr. That every now he run into a speed bump, and you're like, dude, you're such a good player one week. The great ones don't have – they have bad games. Everybody has them. But the inconsistencies of – and I don't judge a guy by the money he makes. I could give a rat's rear end about that. I care about your performance under duress. And I also told you things. You're getting hit. What does Brian Flores like? He'll pressure you. You're getting hit, knocked around. Keep an eye on that because things change in decisions for quarterbacks. Some elevate, some disappear, or a little bit more meek and submissive on the attack factor. I think Derek Carr is a hell of a player. Derek Carr's not a great quarterback. He's a really good one. But this is what you're going to get. And with Jameis, we'll get to same thing. Throw you back into it, then throw you out of it. Matter of fact, Matty, I'm not very good at much. But with both of these guys, it's just we hit it. It's spot on. One's the inconsistent, they're both will put up huge numbers. They will both make you say wow for different reasons on the good side. And then at some point, you're going to throw your hat and clipboard. You're going to rip off your headset and say, what are you looking at?
I would be so much more okay with if we just said, you know what? We are going to be an air raid offense. We're going to let it rip. Whether it's Derek Carr or Jameis or whatever, we're going to throw it 60-something times a game. We're running out of shotgun. We are going to get the ball in Chris Olave and Michael Thomas's hands and Rashid Shaheed's hands. If that's what we're going to try and do. That's how we're going to try and do it. And if I had to watch Jameis throw picks or Derek throw picks or whatever, at least I know what we're trying to do. Or if we said we're going to run the ball with Alvin Kamara 20 times a game, and we're going to do play action off of that, and we're going to run short to intermediate routes, and we're going to see if that works. I'd be okay with that. I would be okay with any of that. Like, I'd be fine if we just had a plan. If we just had an idea of like, okay, we're going to try and do this to win the game. As of right now, we don't have that.
What in the world did you see? And so I can tell you this, if the Saints are going to win another Super Bowl anytime soon, they have to. Now, I'm not even talking about cap restrictions and all the money they got. I'm just talking about strictly on the field play. Their Super Bowl winner is not on their roster at that position. And I hate to say it, and others may skirt around, and it's no dis. They're both better play. We got a Heisman and we got $100 million. I mean, hellified players. You don't have to be the greatest to still win in the league. But winning gets you where most guys live. Are you a January guy or a February guy? And I'm just telling you now, I don't believe you have a February guy in the building at that position. Good.
Yeah, it's probably right. I mean, I say that all the time. Before the season, you can go down the NFL list and you can scratch off teams. And I don't care how good their pass rush is. I don't care how good their secondary is. I don't care how good they are on special teams. I don't care about their defensive line. You can go and you can scratch off teams by the quarterback position. You can do it every single year. The easiest thing in the world barring injuries, obviously. The easiest thing to work in the world, I think, is to pick division winners in the NFL because you just pick the best quarterback. And even if you don't win the division, you're going to be in the conversation. That's just how the NFL plays. That's how the NFL rolls out. Again, like I said, injuries, all that stuff, obviously that throws a loop into it. But if you just do that, you'll probably be all right. Who's the worst quarterback in the division? They're probably going to be last. There you go. Real easy. Look at the NFC East. Who's the best quarterback in the division? Jalen Hurts. Who's the second best? Dak Prescott. Who's the third best? Sam Howell. Who's the fourth best? Daniel Jones. How does that play out? Exactly like that. We didn't talk about the pass rush. We didn't talk about the running backs. We didn't talk about the coaches. We didn't talk about the secondary. We didn't talk about any of that. Tush push. We didn't talk about none of that. Just boom, 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 boom. AFC West. Who's the best quarterback? Patrick Mahomes. Who's the second best? Justin Herbert. Who's the third best? Russell Wilson. Who's the fourth best? Before the season, Jimmy Garoppolo. Bam, 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 bam. Andy Reid, Sean Payton, didn't talk about it. Defenses, didn't talk about it. Schedule, who cares? Just nice and easy. AFC North. Who's the best quarterback? Even if you say Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow are about the same, pick one. All right? So then the other one would be second. Who's third best? Deshaun Watson. Then Kenny Pickett. You watch that play out, it's probably going to be Baltimore and Cincy at the top every year rotating. And then the other two, probably going to be, Deshaun and Kenny right there. It's easy. And it really is. And the Saints just don't have the quarterback. You can go through right now and eliminate teams. They can't win a Super Bowl. And the Saints probably are in that conversation of they can't win a Super Bowl with Derek Carr. And they certainly can't with Pete Carmichael, Dennis Allen, Derek Carr, Jameis, like that whole combo. And we said it before the season. We said the Saints have to have a top 5 defense to really compete. Bad news, they don't. Bad news, they have an average defense. Not even top 10. They have an average defense. So that's problematic, for sure.
Good, put up numbers, look great sometimes, but sometimers don't make Super Bowls, and sometimers don't live consistently where they need to for a team. You want me to go around the league, and there's not a lot of them. I can go around the league and tell you the guys this year who aren't written space, they're living in success because why?
Yeah.
They just get it, and there's a different feel about what they do.
Yeah, you
don't have that guy on your roster. Great, really, really damn good players, but the elite of the great, there's only a handful of those, and neither one of these guys are doing that for you.
And every one of those players that reside in great, Sean, were drafted by their team. And the Saints refuse to take that risk.
Why? Yeah, I don't get it.
They've done it once in their history, Sean. They've done it once.
On my show. Yeah, Maddie, do you know?
So that is true, right? It is true that the Saints don't draft first-round quarterbacks. They've done it once in their history, 1971 with Archie Manning. But when you think about the Saints history-wise, it does kind of make sense that they would not have drafted a quarterback in the first round. So think about, let's just go through the Saints over the last 30 years, okay? So, or let's do less than 30. Let's do like the last, whatever, we'll just call it 30. So you go Aaron Brooks, all right? You have Aaron Brooks as your quarterback. Aaron Brooks was a 9-year starter for the Saints. So he's their starting quarterback. He's their franchise quarterback, whatever, for 9 years. Then after that, you get into the Breeze era. You get into that time, and Breeze has like a huge chunk, well over 10 years, huge chunk. And then now we're where we are now. You go get Carr. Carr is your franchise guy for 3 to 4 years. The Saints have been one of those franchises where, like, have you ever seen the Browns? How the Browns have like the jersey, the quarterback jersey, where the Browns have, it's like 50 different last names because they're always rotating quarterbacks. The Saints are one of those franchises that have not done that. They've been pretty like, they have a quarterback and he stays there for a while. They have a quarterback, he stays there for a while. Even if they rotate guys, like during the Trevor Siemian period, it's only for a couple of years. and then they lock on to another guy. Then they give that guy. And when you think about Aaron Brooks, certainly no Hall of Famer, certainly no great quarterback, but he had a longer career than Andrew Luck. That's crazy to think about. Like how long he played in New Orleans, how long he played as a starting quarterback for a franchise. When you look at I'd have to go back and do the research, but go look at Cam Newton in Carolina, Andrew Luck in Indianapolis, and Aaron Brooks in New Orleans. I would bet they're all pretty similar. I would not be surprised if Aaron Brooks has the longest tenure out of those three. And it'd be hard to predict that.
Whenever you're on my show and we're talking about teams that need the position, do you realize that I think for the last half a dozen years on my my Sean Salisbury show, you start to say, okay, they got to draft one this year, right? They got to draft that guy. They got to find Stroud or that guy this year, right? Even if you got your veteran star on your roster, you've got to find him, right?
But even this year, I could see Loomis sitting there going look, we have Carr for the next couple of years. We have this much money baked into him. We're not going to draft a quarterback in the first round. I could see Loomis doing that. Because even right now, even as bad as things are right now, we still have the theoretical guy there. We still have the $100 million franchise quarterback guy. I could see that. We passed up Lamar Jackson. We passed up, or we were a pick off of Patrick Mahomes. And at the time, I remember arguing with Saints fans saying, you can't draft Lamar Jackson. You have Drew Brees. What's he going to do? Even if you drafted Patrick Mahomes, let's say the Lattimore year, you draft Mahomes. When does Mahomes play? You're not benching Drew Brees. So are you going to wait for Mahomes? You're going to wait for Brees to retire? If you would have done that, you'd have to go back and look at the actual years. But Mahomes would have had to sit for 3 years minimum behind Brees. So I understand it. I understand why you wouldn't do that. And the Saints also are a team that rarely is that bad. They're rarely, always drafting in the top 5 or always drafting in the top 3 where those quarterbacks are there. So they just have not been a franchise that's been in that position to draft a quarterback in the first round. It's a unique. If you look at the history of it, it's very unique. But this year they're in the exact same place. More than likely, they'll have somewhere around 9 to 11 wins. They have a franchise quarterback under contract for the next couple of years. So are they going to draft a quarterback with the 15th pick? Knowing the Saints, probably not.
And every year it's out this building. Try this guy. Move the running back to quarterback. Go get a guy who threw 30 picks, who's a good player and a good numbers guy, but he also threw 30. Threw the ball to the other team. That's a lot. Some guys, hell, at Stroud's rate, it'll take him 6 years to get to that point in one. Somebody got in one season. Like I said, I have so much respect for what those two quarterbacks do and who they are. But I also know that if you're really being honest as a fan and not kissing rear end or not criticizing personal, it's nothing personal. It's football play. You are going to have to find somebody else and probably get that guy that you grows up in a system, unless, of course, Pat Mahomes decides he wants to play in New Orleans next year, which that ain't going to happen. So I don't know how you do it, Matty, but I'm just telling you, this is a roster on defense and on offense. And Dobbs played his ass off. Again, we talked about last week. He's doing right now, it's one of the great stories these last 2 weeks in football. And Minnesota, don't look now, is in a playoff position.
Yeah.
But for the Saints and for what we're watching, they need to be better. This is inexcusable because they've got really good players, and you can't live like this, man. And you got to protect the ball, and you've got to be more explosive on a weekly basis.
Agreed. I'm actually curious. Let's go ahead and let's go look at the Saints all-time quarterback. So just to go back real quick on the Aaron Brooks, Luck, and Newton thing, this is pretty interesting. So if you look at Brooks, he played 6 seasons for the Saints. He was their quarterback for basically 6 seasons. If you look at Luck was the Colts quarterback for 3.5, 5.5. So little less than Brooks, right? So Brooks was more of a franchise quarterback to the Saints than Andrew Luck was to the Colts. You look at Cam Newton, he had 8 seasons with the Panthers in his first stretch before He gets hurt and then goes to New England, comes back. That was a disaster. So Newton is the most of the franchise quarterbacks out of those three, but only by 2 seasons. You know, that first stretch being 8. That's wild. Because Newton's a first overall pick. You know, Luck is a first overall pick. Those guys are, of course, going to be franchise quarterbacks. It's nuts that those 3 are pretty similar. So if you look at the list of Saints quarterbacks, all right, this is what I was talking about. Look at this since 2000, okay? Since 2000, so almost 24 years, the Saints had Aaron Brooks, Drew Brees, that year of, you know, Jameis Winston, that whole weird Jameis, Dalton, Simeon, and then Derek Carr. That's nuts. No other team does that. No other team says, for 20-something years, we're going to basically have 4 quarterbacks. We're going to have Aaron Brooks, Drew Brees, Jameis Winston, and Derek Carr. 4 quarterbacks. I mean, you got to give it to the Saints. I mean, you can even go further back, right? Go further back. Let's go to Archie. So Archie gets drafted. I mean, this is the entirety of the franchise. You go this Billy Kilmer. Okay, so Billy Kilmer, Archie gets drafted. Archie plays until the early 80s. This is Dave Wilson and is here from 83 to 86. Then Abear takes over. All right, so we got Billy Kilmer, Archie Manning, Dave Wilson. Abear really took over in 85. So let's go Billy Kilmer, Archie Manning, this Wilson Stabler combo. Then you go Abear from 85 to 89. Or no, even 92. Then you go Jim Everett for a couple of years. This is kind of a mix right here before Brooks. This is the biggest, I would say this is the biggest mix for the Saints after from Abear to Brooks. Because then you go like Jim Everett, you got Kerry Collins in there, you got all kind of people. So besides that chunk, it's pretty much been Archie, Abear, Brooks, Brees, Jameis, Carr. That's wild. I would bet this is the least amount of turnover. This is a top 5 least amount of turnover of any franchise. You'd have to go back and look at like the Packers with Favre into Rodgers. You know, that's one that comes to mind. But it's pretty wild. But when you look at this, the whole reason I'm bringing this up is that if you look at this, it makes sense. Like, when would the Saints have drafted a quarterback? It would have had to be here. It would have had to have been between Abear and Brooks to fix all this stuff with, you know, all these quarterbacks playing. But they're not going to draft one during Archie. They're not going to draft one during Abear. They weren't drafting one during Brooks. You're certainly not drafting one during Brees. It's pretty wild. Let me know in the comments, ladies and gentlemen, what you think about everything we covered here today. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.